So there's a lot of new faces in here, and there's a lot of folks that this is the brand new issue to them. So I'll do my best without knocking everybody out with the real 30,000-foot in-depth analysis. But basically the reason we are here is because 30 years ago, the city of Destin signed a franchise agreement with Gulf Power. What a franchise agreement is the right and privilege for any utility to come into the city of Destin and be the exclusive provider of whatever that utility is. In exchange for that privilege, they have to offer us certain conditional items. There are things called franchise fees that are paid. So if you pull out your bill, you'll see franchise fees that are paid on the bill, which is remitted to the city. I believe we collect about go ahead.
1.7 million a year.
Okay, under the current arrangement. So, to give you an update of where we've gotten from there, it was signed in 1986 with Gulf Power. It included a purchase provision that said after 1996, at any time thereafter until 2016, the city, if it so wanted to, could purchase the system if it thought it wise to do so. The reason, as I'll defer to my father, was the reason you put that in there is because at the end of the day, if you want to actually be able to push back on a massive monopoly, you have to actually be able to say, I can leave. And the only way you can practically say you can leave is through a purchase provision that includes what's called arbitration. Arbitration is the legal procedure that allows the city to go with Gulf Power hand in hand in front of a panel of judges, and they quickly and very low cost, from a low cost standpoint, determine what the value of the system is going to be. If you do not have that system, that procedure enshrined in your contract, that franchise agreement, you have to use what's called eminent domain. I think a lot of you guys know what that is, but basically you have an unwillful seller and you have to, as the government, claw it away from them, and you have to give them just compensation under the I believe the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution. That process is insanely expensive. If you wanted to get a $100 million piece of a system, the fact that you have to pay under eminent domain law, the other side's attorney's fees, their costs, their expert witnesses, you take a $100 million asset and you could triple it. It makes it impossible from a feasible standpoint to pay that amount using eminent domain, which means if eminent domain is, if you don't have a purchase provision as a city, it means you're stuck with your, once you sign that agreement with that power company or that water company or that gas company, you are stuck with them forever, because you will never be able to afford to purchase the system back from them using eminent domain. That's why it's so important. With our system being worth roughly $70 million, that purchase provision is literally gold. Now, I have been, for the last 6 months, negotiating and recently taking information on how we can get into a new franchise agreement with Gulf Power. I literally went to Gulf Power and said, let's do the exact same agreement we've had for the last 30 years. The answer is no. The reason the answer is no is because they do not want us to continue to have that purchase provision. They said it was a legacy. I said, well, that's a legacy problem for you, not for me. I'm not giving it up. It's the only guarantee that you and your bosses will treat the city of Destin fairly in the future, and frankly, for my children and my grandchildren. So it's imperative that we preserve it. We negotiated over the last several weeks in depth, and where we left it was a agreement that was going to be a 15-year agreement with a 5-year purchase provision that would, it would be a purchase provision that we would be allowed to exercise at year 5, and then after, at any point at the end of year 15. I'm sorry to say they changed the deal with a last-minute switch that basically changed it to where we'd only have one opportunity to exercise it in year 5, and if we don't exercise it, we lose it, and we get one more opportunity to use it in year 15. The problem even further is that the actual the actual purchase provision has been limited in scope, where they've basically they've neutered the ability to actually purchase the asset. They took the substations away from us, and what I got to do very quickly is explain to you what it is we would ever purchase, and frankly, that's a distribution system. You have generation, You have transmission from the generation station, and then it goes to a substation like on Main Street, and then it's from the substation down is the distribution system. If you ever want to be able to operate power, you have to have the substations. Well, they snuck in language at the very last moment, taking the substations away from us. So what is exactly, if we ever exercise our purchase, would we actually be buying? We would be buying a giant albatross that we could never do anything with, because immediately we would have to go buy brand new substations on land we didn't have in a network that's already built out. So believe me when I tell you, they have not negotiated in good faith, and frankly they took a gamble that at the last 11th hour that they were going to put a bunch of changes in on me and that I would capitulate and say okay. And the answer is we didn't. And on Thursday night we exercised our right to purchase, which is a legal operation that preserves our right indefinitely to potentially purchase if we so desire at some future point. The point is we're continuing on a parallel path to negotiate with Gulf Power, attempting to continue to get us in a good franchise agreement. So at the end of the day, we haven't purchased anything, but we have preserved our right to do so.